Welcome everyone to today's webinar. It's the launch of our most recent survey, The Future of Data Architecture. Has the data warehouse had its day? Before we get down to the really hard content you're all looking forward to, I have to go through a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, if you look at the right part of your screen, you'll find some tabs: a chat, Q&A, polls, and handouts tab. You can ask your questions at any time via the Q&A tab. We will get back to your questions at the end of the session. So if you have a question that is specific to a certain speaker, please write the name of the speaker in your question so we know who to direct that to. You can also write messages at any time via the chat tab. You will find additional content in the handouts tab that you can download. And we will also be hosting a poll later on to hear your view on one certain question we also posted in the survey. By the way, the questions that we don't get answered today for the sake of time, we will answer them after the event, or the speakers you directed them to will, so you will in any case receive an answer. And the webinar will be recorded, so if you really liked it and you would like to share that with your colleagues, they can listen to it later on demand. So without further ado, I think I'd like to introduce who's with me here today. We have some really profound data expertise gathered here. If we can maybe see who's here. We have three speakers. We have Robin Tandon, who is Director of Product Marketing for EMEA and Latin America. Hi, Robin. Very, very cool to have you here. We have John DeSantFell from Precisely, who is Senior Product Manager, Data Integrity. Hi, John. We have Frank Wagner, who is a solutions specialist at Time Extender, and I'm really looking forward to your views, your specific views on these survey results. But let's move on to the agenda for today. So we'll start. We just did the housekeeping, and I'll do a little introductory presentation. I'll stay in time because there's so much in this study to talk about, but of course we only have limited time today. So I really want to encourage you, regardless of what you hear today, do take a step and download the survey so that you can read more details. And there are really some cool insights in there. And then we'll follow on with the other speakers. We'll start in alphabetical sequence with Denodo, followed by Precisely and Time Extender, and as already mentioned, the Q&A session at the end. The future of data architecture. This was a global survey with over 250 participants. As most of our surveys, it had a wide coverage of industries and also of company sizes. The analysis I prepared for today especially focuses on different peer groups, because what we found in this survey is that the different peer groups can have very different perspectives on what is going well and what is not going so well. For example, a difference between best in class and the rest, but also the differences in the perspectives of the data and analytics competence centers, the central teams, versus the people, the business users in the different business domains. And the first question we actually asked was which data architecture approaches will be important for the future. So that was part of the survey. And I'd also like to post this question to you, so that you can give us your answers, and we'll compare that to what was actually posted in the survey. So, and just to give a view on how content, how satisfied are companies really with their current data and analytics landscape, I don't want to show you the full slide because that would be a little bit too detailed. But in general, the picture really is pretty good. We asked about 12 aspects, and in 6 out of 12, a majority of respondents, so 50% or more, actually said they were very, or at least somewhat, satisfied with the current landscape. So I actually want to pick out a couple of things that people are not so content with, and look at the different perspectives here. And so we're now looking at the answers of those that said they are somewhat or very dissatisfied, and we're looking at the top 4 people were most dissatisfied with. And they're mainly focused on flexibility and extensibility on one hand, and the complexity of the data landscape, and that it's so difficult to really understand it as a whole. And if you look at the colored dots, the dark orange ones are the central data and analytics teams. The light orange ones are the data and analytics experts in the business units, and the blue dots are the managers and process experts in the business units. And as you can see, the business users, they tend to see things more critical than the data and analytics competence centers actually do. And this is like a line that we could follow throughout all the questions. It seems that business users find that their needs aren't being met as well as the data and analytics teams think they are meeting them. So, of course, we also asked what challenges data users actually face. And the one aspect that was rated highest is the fact that business users cannot implement new requirements themselves. Very interestingly, it seems not to be an aspect of tools being too technical, because this was rated very, very far down the line. Now let's take a closer look at that. So, I mean, giving users more freedom in working with data and analytics is usually termed as giving them self-service analytics. And these initiatives are usually very much focused on the central data warehouses, data lakes, whatever, that are provided by these central teams. Now, 71% are actually giving the business users more freedom in the use of data and analytics, and with best in class, it's even 90%. And for this, 74% of companies are actually introducing analytics tools suitable for business users. And again, here, best in class is even investing more in this area. But I mean, analytics and working with data is more than just reports and dashboards and classic analysis. And often enough, self-service tools are also used to support operational reporting, but they're usually not geared really towards embedded or even real-time analytics and even decision automation. So it's only part of the picture that's actually being covered here. And on the other side, data discovery, working with new analysis methods, working with data I haven't been using so far, that is perhaps not even available in the central data warehouse, is something that is becoming more and more common, and not alone just for data scientists, but for skilled business analysts in the business areas as well. So for this task, you would probably have to do, or you would sometimes need to do, some data preparation, but only 48% of enterprises are actually active in this area. So it seems that when there is a business need for preparing data for an individual advanced analysis, It's not something that the data and analytics strategy really wants to support with a dedicated tool. So, and I mean, there are good reasons for this. Governance is one of the reasons, but on the other hand, if business users have the need, they will do it anyway. And if they have no other choice, they will do that, of course, in Microsoft Excel or similar desktop tools they have anyway. So let's move on to the second challenge that data users face, and that's that data for analysis must be tediously gathered from various sources. So apparently the approach the central teams are taking by developing a central point of truth, a central data repository to serve hopefully all needs of the business users isn't working very well. And looking specifically at the line of business users, their agreement is even much higher, whereas overall respondents, it's 43%. Among the line of business users, it's even as high as 61%. So it seems we have an issue here with our data architecture. And let's just look at the poll. No, we haven't closed it yet, have we? Yes, we have. Oh, just a minute. So let's take a look. I think you can take a look at the poll as well. We see that the data warehouse has reached 21% as the most important for the future landscape. The data lake, 13%. The winner of the day is the data lakehouse with 45%. Logical data warehouse is chosen as most important by 15%, so that's more than a data lake, but still less than the data warehouse. And other, please specify in the chat, would be 5%. Did we get some answers there? I guess you guys can, I don't see any here. Okay, but anyway, the clear winner is the data lakehouse. Now let's take a look at what the survey says. I was very surprised to hear that for 50%, so 1 in 2 of all respondents, the data warehouse is still the most important data architecture approach for the future, but for best in class, the most chosen approach is indeed the data lakehouse. So I will just assume that most of you in the webinar today are best in class, or at least aiming at becoming that very, very soon. But in any case, regardless if you're building a warehouse, a lake, or a lakehouse, all of these approaches follow a similar rationale. They physically take data from a source, move it to one place, and collect it and compile it there. So that's always the single point of truth approach, which apparently, though, still has its limitations because business users, still apparently don't find what they need in the central data repository. But logical data warehouses, as we can see in our poll too, and data virtualization, which is one very important component of a logical warehouse, are of growing relevance, especially for best in class. Now let's take a look once more at our overall data landscape. It still remains fragmented. So we're focusing on building a central point of truth, be it a warehouse, be it a lakehouse, but our business users still find that their requirements are not covered very well. 43% of users, of managers and process experts in the business say that the data warehouse or data lake does not cover our requirements. And even one step further, 74% of these people say the existing data is not suitable for the necessary analysis. So even if some of their requirements are covered in the data warehouse, frequently it's not suitable for what they want to do with it. So again, they have to somehow massage the data themselves to actually achieve what they want to achieve. So moving on to the third most highest rated challenge for users, and that is that IT cannot react quickly enough to new requirements, which is why they're forced to doing it themselves, no matter with what kind of tooling. And this is often not really seen as something positive. It's rather seen as a curse by many business users, as we've seen in surveys before. So let's take a closer look at how we work today. And it's very typical for the applications that support the operational business processes that we work in domain-oriented cross-functional teams. So we have domain experts in the business working with technical people that develop the applications and that operate them, and they work together on a certain domain. On the other hand, in data and analytics, we have chosen mostly for many, many years to establish data and analytics functional teams that, regardless of the architecture we build, they work for many domains. And usually these teams are smaller, at least their team size is smaller than the sum of the domain-oriented teams working for the operational applications. So it's actually, I mean, it's a no-brainer why they have limited facilities or limited resources to actually support all these needs of all these different domains. So one of the main challenges these data and analytics teams face is limited scalability. But the second one is limited business domain expertise. And this is actually something that, again, the business users are actually saying also. 73% say that the domain expertise in the data and analytics teams is insufficient. And there's a risk in this, because where people who don't really know enough about the business domain, now they're excellent data architects and excellent data engineers, but if you don't have enough insight in the domain requirements, then there is a risk of not matching really the needs. And that's what also 70% of the business owners actually state, that implemented data and analytics applications do not cover our needs. So I think that outside in the market, you all really know what needs to be done. Of course, it would help to improve the data sources, but it would also make a lot of sense not only to focus on the single point of truth, but to make all relevant data sources searchable and accessible, regardless if they're integrated in the single point of truth or not. And this is especially important for business users, as is maybe obvious, considering their tedious work that they need to do to collect all kinds of data that they need. And data virtualization is an important concept in this area because, of course, it supports making all relevant data sources available, regardless if they're integrated in the data warehouse or not. Another important part of this picture, so opening up towards data virtualization and making more data sources available, is to have an overarching semantic data layer, and perhaps also to have a data catalog that helps business users navigate and search in the data sources that are available. And interestingly, the people who are actually doing this, the percentages are pretty low. So it's only 28% actually looking at introducing a data catalog, and only 17% are working on an overarching semantic layer. And at the bottom of the line, now we spoke about the top two organizational measures that companies are choosing to help make things better. But I think it's important also to look at the next three. So these are sorted by These are sorted by the most relevant measures. So we have those with the answer of little or no relevance, sorted from the lowest upwards. This means that these 5 measures are most relevant, although only the dark blue ones, the dark blue percentages, say it is relevant and it is already being done. Light blue is relevant and planned, and orange is even relevant but not planned. So while we saw that the first 2 measures are being done quite often, or it's planned to get them done, the next 3, which would be very, very important from a usability of data point of view, it seems they're not gaining that much traction. And there's a reason for this too. If we look at what the business users say and what the management level says, they say the challenges they experience in actually implementing these important approaches and measures are basically, first of all, that harmonization of data is difficult from an organizational and or business point of view. So it doesn't have anything with technology or architecture to do it all. That there is a lack of competencies, skills, and experience in the business team. So they are aware they must become more data and analytics literate to actually be able to make improvements. And the fact that they are lacking skills is probably the basis for not being clear enough which requirements they actually have in terms of data and utilizing analytics to really generate value for the business. And one point that the business users also see, they don't even have the ownership for data products, and they find this is a problem because, of course, the central data teams who now have the ownership, they're missing domain expertise, as we learned. And of course, it would help an awful lot if they could share in the ownership or help in the ownership and really push these things forward. Now, managers have a similar view, but there is one thing I would really like to point out here. I was really, really surprised to see that managers actually say, the second highest rated challenge here, that modernization of the data landscape is not a priority. So that might be one of the main reasons why we are treading water here. It seems for the management level, it is not clear what are the benefits of investing in data and analytics. Why should I do that? And where would it make a difference for my business? And of course, that's kind of a chicken and egg issue. If you're not clear about your requirements and you don't know where to push things to in the future, then of course you aren't clear on what value it will generate either. So you can't convince managers to really invest. So I think this is part of the big picture. It's not just technology and architecture, but it also means investments I have to become serious about, which also have something to do with skills not only in central teams, but also in the business. And I think that's something we can learn from and say, okay, we have to do a better job of convincing management on one hand, and on the other hand, we have to do a better job of really working together with the business teams to find the right solutions to their problems, and not just trying to answer every requirement through the central data warehouse or lakehouse. We will still need them. No, of course, no question. But there are other concepts around these central concepts that will be of use in the future too. So that's it from me today. And I'd like to pass it on now to Robin, who will give us Denoto's view of data architecture in the future.
Well, thanks, Jacqueline. So just bear with me 1 second while I share up my screen. So let me just do that. Okay. So you should all be able to see my screen now. So just before we get into the presentation, I just wanted to thank Jacqueline and BARC for the research. And one of the things that I had the pleasure of doing is I managed to review the document prior to the launch. So managed to build my content around the 5 key observations from the study. So let's get started. Very quickly, before we start that, the helicopter overview of Denodo, in case you don't know who we are. So Denodo are a leader in data management. We've been in this space since 1999. We're a global company. We've got presence in over 20 countries, 25 offices, 600 employees. We number about 1,000 plus customers. Many of them are Fortune 500 and Global 2000 companies, and they range across pretty much every major industry. We have 300 active engaged partners worldwide, and many of the leading industry analysts, including BARC as well as Gartner and Forrester, acknowledge us as a leader. So the first observation that we come to from the study is data and analytics users are patient. And Jacqueline actually mentioned a couple of these figures herself. But what I see here is there's no surprise. So existing data and analytics are not easily understood by business. Existing data is hard to find. And there's a disparity, but the interesting place where the highest level of disparity there is at the sea level. So you've got 77% of sea levels saying that they can't find the data. And that's going to be a problem. And what we also know is if the sea level is struggling, things will have to change. So the next observation is implemented and data analytics applications do not cover our requirements. Now, again, a disparity there between the business users and the technical folks. So the technical folks are quite satisfied, really. I mean, 32% is relatively low, whereas again, we're up at 70% of managers and business users. So there's a 38% discrepancy there in terms of what they're actually getting. So they don't think they're getting what they need. Again, another driver for change. So business users have been patient for far too long. Things are going to change, and they're going to change quickly. Another observation that I think was very true was centralized data architectures have served their time. And we can see that a little bit by the poll, and seeing that lakehouses are up there in the logical data warehouse, 15% and so on. So we've really moved in periods, and I'm old enough to have been in IT since the 1990s, so not quite the 1980s, but back in the 80s we had databases and we had single sources of data, which really proliferated through the 80s and into the 90s. And I started getting involved in data integration in the early 90s, and the concepts of a data warehouse were born. So you were going from the operational data stores, databases, into your data warehouse, and that for me is the first stage of evolution of data and data integration. The second stage is where we start adding in a lot of unstructured data, so social media, cloud data. That starts to happen around the turn of the century. So for the last 20 years or so, this has been a problem. And through the 2010s, the concept of big data evolved. So we knew that we had IoT devices, we had data lakes, we were getting lots of data coming from lots of locations. The data was, some of it in the cloud, some of it was structured, some of it was unstructured. This is now causing a headache, or as I often refer to it as a spaghetti mess of data. And through the 2020s, we've evolved even further, and a lot of people have got needs in data science, query accelerators. We've got lakehouses, cloud data stores, and all of these hyperscalers. So this particular slide relates to a slide from Gartner. And really what we see here is the different phases. So we're now to this second major cycle of analytical consolidation. And interestingly, We spoke a little bit there about the logical data warehouse. So we are looking at it from a logical perspective, a way of tying together the spaghetti of data that exists across your enterprise. Really wanted to talk a little bit about the distributed data landscape and the fragmented and siloed data. So in the distributed data landscape, you end up with fragmentation. So distributed data resides in multiple locations. It can be on-premise, it can be replicated. And these causes some of the challenges of time for data delivery. So we go back to the survey and we look at some of the observations from the business users in particular. Time to value is a big issue. Costs. If you've got replication of data, you're going to escalate your costs. And I'm giving a talk later this week, actually, at Big Data London. So if anybody's, feel free to call by. And during that talk, I'm not just talking about the monetary cost of data, but also the environmental cost. When you replicate data, you have an environmental footprint because you're taking up compute power, you're taking up disk space, and all of these are costs that you have to take into consideration alongside quality. So quality, again, is one of the biggest challenges people face. And we can all think of examples where poor quality data has led to organizations getting in trouble. And particularly here in Europe, where we have GDPR, that can be a major issue for an organization. So duplicated data tends to get out of sync. And that's one of the problems that they face. You end up, if you're not careful, with a monolithic architecture, with this physically centralized data or trying to put it into a single location. So for example, a lake or a lake house. So this in itself has the challenges, intensive data replication, it's difficult to maintain, and this often can be incompatible with your existing analytical systems. So you need to be, it cannot be reused. So it needs to get ingested, manipulated, transformed. What are the merits of the logical approach? Well, with a logical centralized approach to data, we can see there a description. And Jacqueline mentioned data virtualization as being a really important technology here to help with the tying together the data sources. So a logical architecture, consumers access the data through the semantic layer, which is decoupled from the data location on the physical schemas. So the business benefits by having a business-friendly interface. Again, I know Jacqueline mentioned that a few minutes ago. A simple unified semantic layer, which has a single unified security and governance layer. It's also future-proof. It allows for the back-end technology to change. So if you are doing a migration from an on-premise Oracle database up to a Snowflake cloud-based solution, that's fine. You can have a single data access layer, a middleware layer, for want of a way of putting it, that looks exactly the same, irrespective of where the data is originating and coming from. And you can manage that process of migration much seamlessly. So the Denodo platform provides you that logical platform for all your data. We have certified integrations to over 150 different data sources. So irrespective of the location, of the style, of the state of your data, there is a way of accessing it through the data virtualization layer. These include all of the traditional databases, data warehouses, cloud stores, data lakes, even down to flat files, core files, real-time feeds. We've got all of those covered. Key to the success of creating your logical platform is the management of the data. So we have query optimization and acceleration techniques that we've derived over the last 20 years to help you optimize your queries. A lot of benchmarking reports for that. Please visit our website, download some interesting content. In particular, one paper that I quite like is the Denodo Denodo platform technical white paper. You can get through our resources section. We have AI and ML recommendations engines, really powerful. Think of that as your Netflixy type experience through the data catalog, enhanced security and governance all the way down to an individual row or column level. ability to work across hybrid and multi-cloud systems. So the ability to have on-premise data mixed in with SaaS data, mixed in with cloud data, all of this is normal for us. And then finally having that advanced semantic layer, all providing the delivery mechanism through our data catalog. So that's a self-service interface for the business user through integrations with all of your favorite BI tools, Tableau, Click, anything there that you'd be normally using. Data science tools, Python, R, full integration with the Denodo platform. And then finally you have your APIs, which can be provided outwards through RESTful OData, GraphQL, or GeoJSON. I did actually forget to mention the most obvious way of accessing your data virtualization layer is through standard SQL integration. So the third observation is business users' empowerment must finally gain momentum. Now that we've agreed that many of the challenges reported in the survey around business users and C-level execs' ability to access data, it's going to make sure that things are moved forward. Data democratization. So data democratization means that everybody has access to data and there are no gatekeepers that create a bottleneck of at the gateway to the data. So why should enterprises democratize? It's a very good question. Well, all the data becomes available to everybody. You begin to empower users with self-service. They're engaged and accountable, helping them with the agility and speed of decision-making. And this is a topic and a theme we hear regularly through our customer base. Implementing a logical data fabric or a logical approach using the Denodo platform helps you become much more agile and helps you make more accurate and informed decisions in a timely manner, which of course has a significant impact on the bottom line. And then also collaboration, allowing business users and technical folks to collaborate on the data. So what is a data marketplace and why is it important? But really, if you are approaching that concept of data democratization, you're also thinking about data marketplaces. And they can contain ready-made, trusted data and analytical assets. They can be made available as services or common data names. Full metadata and lineage across the organization, and should be accessible through an easy-to-use interface like a data catalog. And they should be able to be reused across the enterprise, but without falling down the trap of making everything available to everybody. So you need to have that unified governance there on top. So business users and domain experts must take responsibility for data products. This really brings us in data fabric and data mesh. I read a piece by Gartner back in November, and it was, are data fabric and data mesh the same or different? And really, we wanted to summarize this into a couple of bullet points. It's again, that's a free piece of research, I believe, so you can go on the Gartner website and download that if you're interested. I believe they may have updated it as well recently. So for me, a data fabric is about designing an architecture for enterprise-wide data management. A data mesh, on the other hand, is about changing your organizational processes to create and manage the domains. So in many respects, a data fabric is the means and the data mesh is the ends. The fabric will provide the foundation needed to support shared or global use cases. And actually in May, I was at a conference, a BARC conference, and this slide was presented. And Jacqueline, I know at the time, I was so impressed. We were giving a roughly similar topic about data mesh and data fabric. And this was what Jacqueline had to say. Data mesh is organizational, and the data fabric is architectural. I couldn't resist using that slide again. So the data mesh using data virtualization, give each domain a schema. And before we go into this, we have 3 different domains. And a common domain may be useful for a centralized data products across the domains. The different domains then connect to their data sources, incorporating the metadata of the different domains. So no need to replicate. So then you can now define your data products. And for execution, you can choose what you want to do flexibly and to evolve. So this is really important. And the centralized team is not in charge of the data, but it's setting the guidance, the guidelines, and governance policies. So it's taking that responsibility of ownership outside of the centralized team and saying to the centralized team, you do what you do best, help manage this asset that we have, and provide us with the governance that we need. Products or data products can be exposed through standard exposure techniques, so SQL, REST, GraphQL, OData. And finally, infrastructure can easily scale out, particularly if you build it in a cluster. So this again is another important point. So evolving a data culture is about the people, not just the technology. This was the final major observation in the research report. I really believe in this, the role of the data citizen. Now, for me, there are just three key things I bring out when I talk about the role of the data citizen. They need to have self-service capabilities. They are not necessarily fully technical users. They might be data scientists, but they're not by any shape or mean data engineer. And often the access and use of data is not their primary job function. So here at Denodo, we provide the Denodo data catalog, and that has Google-like search capabilities. We have the ability to view graphical representations of the semantic model. Data citizens can share and collaborate their data sets. They can tag, they can annotate, they can make suggestions, they can personalize their data sets for their own personal use using our query wizard. It's provided with an enhanced, very user-friendly user interface. So in conclusion, a logical approach to data integration, management, and delivery eliminates data silos, and it addresses the challenges of the C-level. Democratization of the data landscape enables business users to become citizens. In the 21st century, data architectures have evolved from the thing. And that concludes my section. So thank you very much. And I'm going to pass back over to Jacqueline. And stop sharing screen.
Thank you very much, Robin. And thank you very much for bringing up the terms data fabric and data mesh, because they were actually in the chat as other options for the data architecture question, and somehow I oversaw them. So thank you very much. Keen insights, very, very great stuff, great content. And we'll hurry up and move on to John DeSaint-Phal from Precisely, and I'm looking forward to your presentation as well.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can you see me? All right. So yeah, my name is John DeSaint-Phal, and I'm from Precisely. And for those of you that are not so familiar with Precisely, we are a 54-year-old software company. So we were founded in 1968. We're prevalent across a number of different countries. We have about 12,000 customers today, and all of the Fortune 100 except for Tesla as customers as well. So one of these days we'll get there. But in any event, we at Precisely have been solving data problems for the better part of 50 years. So we've been working with some of the largest names from a brand perspective, whether that's through direct customer supplier interactions, whether that's a partnership with some of the leading technologies that exist around the world. So we at Precisely are all about making data more useful to all organizations, large and small. And this is kind of the backdrop with which we approach all of our problems that we try to solve. But today specifically, I'm here to talk to you about something that we have at Precisely called the Data Integrity Suite. So I'm personally part of the product management team, and I want to discuss how the Data Integrity Suite aligns with the future of the data architecture that you've read about and that we've discussed so far. So the suite really represents a new vision for how we approach and solve data problems with a modern and comprehensive solution set that we at Precisely call the Data Integrity Suite. Now, if we step back and look at some of the trends in the market today, right, organizations are hungry for specific advancements in the world of data. And so we'll talk about each of these in relation to the Data Integrity Suite. First and foremost, organizations are looking for a comprehensive data solution, right? We think about how we work with data. There are often many disparate solutions that handle certain aspects of the data lifecycle, right? They might integrate data with ETL or replication. There might be others that provide data quality or data governance, but the market really lacks a comprehensive solution that addresses all of these aspects. And so over the next few minutes, we'll discuss these different stages of data utility and the different features that are really required to handle these different stages. We've also heard about the need for non-technical solutions, right? These solutions that we're looking for are business friendly. They allow for more self-serve utilization from business users. So, it's not just about solutions that provide sort of this technical relevance, but also solutions that provide a mechanism for all those that work with data to understand the importance of data to the business, right? And so we in the software solution business need to provide solutions that are usable on a spectrum of technical proficiency, right? It's not good enough to simply build solutions for engineers that might be working in an area of expertise for a decade or more. More and more organizational roles are being asked to derive insight from their data to differentiate their departments, to differentiate their applications or their projects. And so the solution that does not require an immense amount of technical expertise is essential. And we've also discussed the need to make data processes more business focused, right? Not just integrating data or profiling data or checking that data for data quality, but providing a true business context that tells the user about data ownership, right? Who's using the data and for what purpose? Not just from a technology perspective, like, what software applications use the data, but also from a company policy perspective. If I have an email address, for example, that email address means something to someone within your organization. Not only is it a data point that we replicate or validate or profile, but it's a piece of information that's used for engagement with our users, right? Being able to reach someone via email or not has a tremendous impact on business policies that depend on engagement or help drive customer satisfaction. And so tying business context to data through things like data governance standards is a major gap that we see today in the solutions that might address, data quality or data integration for that matter. The next trend we've discussed is kind of modernizing existing systems and environments to operate on data where it lives, right? Rather than consolidating everything into one monolith single platform, can we replicate from our core transactional systems? Can we do things like run data quality checks on the data where it lives, or provide context to the data where it lives, rather than kind of needing everything in this single location? And finally, can we help drive collaboration across all these different data domains, whether it's data integration or data governance or data quality? All of these things, really all data projects, require data that's up to date, that's high in quality, and that meets governance standards. And so historically, these have all been different disciplines, disparate solutions, none of which is very well understood by those that really understand the value of the business or the need for data within the business. And so the ability for all of these teams to work hand in hand with one another in a collaborative fashion is really going to help speed their time to value in the future. So, that increases everybody's understanding of all aspects of the data lifecycle, whether they're focused on the business or not. So the Data Integrity Suite is really designed to meet all of these needs and provide an enterprise-wide solution to these different problems that we face in the world of data. So what is the Data Integrity Suite? The Data Integrity Suite is a set of modules that offer individual capabilities, but when used together in conjunction with one another, create an environment in which the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So at a very high level, it allows us to provide accuracy, consistency, and context within our data as it first enters our environments, as it evolves over time. And so the Data Integrity Suite is a SaaS-first solution that delivers software in a modern way. And we use a combination of pure SaaS and hybrid SaaS components that allow you the best of the two worlds, right? The benefits of SaaS are a modern look and feel, a browser-based UI. You have easy administration that works with things like single sign-on across your organization. But there are some key elements of data security that are really best served by hybrid solutions. So in short, you own your data, you control your data, it lives behind your firewall, but you can administer these data solutions with a SaaS-based delivery model. So again, you get the best of both worlds from data security, but also the benefits of SaaS. And Precisely launched the Data Integrity Suite in 2022, and we've seen really tremendous progress over the last several months for our various modules. So I want to walk you through those now to give you a sense of the key feature sets that really make up this entire life cycle of data that we call the journey to data integrity. So there are 7 modules within the Data Integrity Suite that are all built on best-in-class technology that has been proven in the market for decades. So again, historically, each of these areas have involved disparate solution sets. They might be on-premise installations or a combination of either on-premise or in the cloud. But for the most part, they've been disparate, separate tool sets that live in different places. They all have different teams that manage each of them. And at Precisely, we've really reimagined and rebuilt these solutions and integrated them into a single suite that allows users to administer them through a common user experience. So no longer do you have these disparate solution sets. They might have been built by a number of different vendors or acquired over time, right? This is a single unified user experience that ensures if you're familiar with one of these modules, you can very quickly come up to speed with the rest. And this is really designed first and foremost for non-technical users, for business users to be able to get value out of these modules the first time that they use them. And Precisely is really the only organization in the marketplace today that provides a combination of both software and data assets to help you increase the value of data at your organization and really build trust in that data. We hear so often that organizations don't trust the data that they have, and that's for a variety of reasons. And so our mission within this suite is to allow organizations to trust their data, to make better informed decisions, which will ultimately allow them to grow faster, better meet the needs of customers and various stakeholders, whether they're inside or outside the company, but also reduce the time it takes to come to market with new data-driven initiatives. And so I'll walk through each of these modules now to give you a sense of what they do in a bit more detail. The first module that we have is data integration, right? And typically in any major data initiative, you first need to connect sources and sometimes move or replicate data with another environment. So, in this case, we understand the need for a number of disparate environments to coexist. And the goal here is to be able to integrate them with a single solution set that ensures you have the data where and when you need it. So with data integration, you can easily create streaming data pipelines that integrate data from these core environments, right? And a lot of times these are relational systems. They might be a mainframe or an IBMI system, but the goal is to marry these types of disparate systems with cloud-based data platforms like Snowflake or like Databricks, like BigQuery or whatever the next evolution is. And so the goal here is to, not necessarily sunset or remove these systems that are really running the core business, but can we really transform them to extend the value of this data and make that data available in these new application systems? And we understand that pipelines need to scale for your needs. You need to be able to develop quickly now, but also onboard new use cases as time goes on. And so the data integration module provides, again, a hybrid SaaS offering that allows you to own the data, but also onboard it to these various systems that you have in your environment as you see fit and as business users require more data. So that's data integration. Data observability is another key module in the data integrity suite that ensures really the reliability of your data, in short. So what this allows you to do is actually monitor your organization's data and perform analysis to determine potential adverse data events and alert those who might need to resolve those issues. So as an example, let's say I'm a user and I'm looking at a sales pipeline report. I might find that the report doesn't have the sales opportunities that were added in the last day or in recent weeks. This is an example of a data freshness issue, right? There might be missing opportunities for a product line that were there last week. That's something that we might refer to as a data drift issue. And so what we do with observability is we use a combination of data profiling and anomaly detection that's driven by machine learning and AI to help understand when data is changing, what systems that's going to impact, and then we can generate alerts based on that. So not only am I integrating data, but I can tell if the values that are being inserted into those data tables are not what I expect, or the volume of my replication is much different than it used to be, or the volume in a particular table is far greater or far less than it was at a given time. These are all different alerts that I can set on my data so that I can be proactively aware of these issues. I don't have to wait for an anomaly in a report to realize that I need to go back and investigate what might be going on with my data. The next, and a key component to pretty much any data policy, is data governance. So our data governance module is a little bit unique in the marketplace today in that it takes a business-first approach to all data elements. So it doesn't just build, let's say, a business glossary or a catalog of all these different elements, but it also ties them back to specific business initiatives that you might have across the enterprise. So I mentioned an email address as an example a bit earlier. Those email addresses are used within specific applications in an enterprise. They also might be tied to top-down initiatives from the highest levels of your organization that dictate an increase in customer satisfaction or engagement or opportunity identification, right? And so these specific metrics that I might have that exist within my environment are actually directly related to initiatives that we have at the highest level of the business. And we all know that data underpins all of these initiatives, underpins the largest decisions and most important decisions that we need to make. And it's important for all users of this data to understand, not only who owns a particular data set, but also how this ties back to key business goals across the enterprise. And that's what you get with data governance. Now, the next item we'll talk about is data quality, right? And you can't really talk about data governance without data quality. So for those of you that are familiar with Precisely's previous offerings of Trillium or Spectrum or Data 360, this data quality module is highly complementary. So we're creating a data quality environment that appeals to modern data engineering, and it leverages really native scalability and elasticity. So what this means is for the business user that we provide a SaaS-based solution that can be quickly implemented and allows users to work with data directly where it lives. So this is going to allow them to boost their productivity. It's going to allow them to refrain from, moving data from all these silos and simply allow it to exist while ensuring that there is data quality. So for example, an organization might be running data quality rules within your ERP system. And so by extending the usage of the data quality module through kind of a simple user interface and a scalable infrastructure, they'll be able to apply this best-in-class data quality natively within a modern analytics environment, or leverage historical results of current data quality to recommend, new opportunities or new areas for address validation or enrichment. So a couple examples. Moving right on ahead, geo-addressing is another example that we have that is further complementary to our data quality. And what this provides is really the ability to attach very specific geolocation data to all of your data elements that might include an address. And what this does is align different data elements to that precise data point, but it also allows us to gain more insight and do more things with the data. So we can do things like spatial analytics. We can develop spatial relationships between, the data elements that you provide and also, general map information. We can create specific maps that analyze this data in various ways to provide, again, added context. And the last element that really ties into that geo-addressing capability is also data enrichment. So can I bring in additional data sets that will enhance the value of the data that I have today? So it's not just the data that I might be, cleansing or might be governing, but we at Precisely have a portfolio of over 400 global data assets with 9,000 attributes that you can use to enhance context for your data. So that's things like data points around specific properties or areas of interest. That's demographic data. That's weather data, things that change over time. We provide up-to-date data sets that really allow you to marry both, external data value with your internal cleansed data sets that are reflective of your organization. And all of this is really underpinned by a key foundational element. So things like agents allow us to deploy a container behind your firewall so that you can, again, get that best of breed or best of experience SaaS solution while still maintaining data security and operating on the data where it lives. We provide APIs that allow all of these different services to communicate with one another, but also make data available, right? If I want to observe data in some way, I might want to do it in my own observability solution and not Precisely's UI. And so providing that experience for business users, but also providing that flexibility where there might be standards across your organization to measure these types of things. And the last common element is a data catalog, which shares information across all of these different modules. So that could be things as traditional in a data catalog as different data points that I have within a table. It could be things as complex as the performance of my real-time data replication pipelines. All of these statistics, all of these data points are combined in a single catalog that allows us to better understand not only our operations, but also the data that we're processing. And so the Data Integrity Suite is really designed to help accelerate this data decision-making across all data processes. So you can choose the capabilities that you need without having to worry about installing the whole platform. Yet the common user experience across all of these modules ensures that a business user can get access to these different capabilities and come up to speed very quickly. So the last thing I'll touch on is we do have capabilities at Precisely that are available today. So I mentioned that we launched this at the beginning of 2022. And so we have 3 modules available today for production environments, those being data integration, data observability, and data governance. We have geo-addressing, which is in its early access stage, which means you can get a demo of this. You can try it in your environment. You can provide recommendations on the solution. And then we also have the remainder of our modules that we're looking to launch by the end of the year that really make up the rest of the Data Integrity Suite. So in this case, the Data Integrity Suite is available for you to try, and we certainly encourage you to reach out. You can reach out to me specifically if you're interested in any of these modules. Data integrity is a journey, right? All of these different steps happen at different times. You might have been running data quality for years, but you weren't necessarily integrating all of your data sources. You might have data governance standards, but you don't have all of your data within the data warehouse that you desire. You might not have all the different analytic capabilities or all the data sets that you need. And so we at Precisely are here to help you, again, on every step in this journey. We recognize that not all will start with integration, not all will start with governance. Some might start at different times or with different solutions. And so that's the beauty of the suite, is you have the flexibility to use each of these individually, but also the ability to string them together and create a cohesive solution that really encourages collaboration across all these different domains, right? We're creating a single experience so that users can recognize the importance of each of these stages in the data lifecycle, but also feel empowered to handle them themselves as they move forward. So I'll close with kind of, Precisely's key takeaways as we've been building this, as we look at some of the results from the study, right? The demand for trusted data has never been greater. Organizations need data. They need trusted data to build insights. And the Data Integrity Suite is really a mechanism to provide this trusted data. It helps you in each step along this data lifecycle that a lot of organizations are doing anyway, but they're doing it in a disparate way. They're doing it with a number of different tool sets that don't really take advantage of the modern software deployment and management mechanisms that we have today as far as SaaS is concerned. And lastly, we at Precisely are here to help you on every step in this journey. Again, we've been solving some of the most difficult problems in data for 54 years, and we'll certainly continue to find ways to make data more useful to our organizations. So an example of a modern solution that's taking a new approach to handling these data problems that are being surfaced in reports such as those by BARC. So I'll pause now and hand back my time to the rest of the group. But certainly feel free to reach out, ask questions if you're interested in any of these aspects and how they might work for your organization.
Thank you very much, John. Really cool, really broad view and broad vision. And I really liked your mentioning of the journey, because I think if we think about all these things, data mesh, data fabric, and taking a broader view on what we do and how we do it with data, it is definitely a journey. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So let's speed on to our third speaker, Frank Wagner from Time Extender. Welcome, and I'm really looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Just 1 second, I will share my screen here. So I really like this the topic of the presentation and of the result of the study, because I myself am a business person who dove over into the data management space and business intelligence and analytics space 15 years ago. So so the results of the study really speak from my experience. That's exactly how I personally feel as well. So just very briefly about Time Extender. We are also not the new kid on the block. We are around since 2006. 3,500 customers are actively using our solutions today in around 95 countries. And of course, you can see, like the others also, data is driving all the verticals, all the industries today. So also our customers, of course, are coming from all the industries that you can think of. And guess what? The data, of course, is rapidly increasing in volume and velocity, and that is why. And I liked it very much the way Robin showed us a bit about the history of the data architectures and where we came from and how everything has evolved. And of course, now more than ever, the pressure is on, right? The data is increasing, and the organizations, the companies, they have to cope with that. And so basically, here you have your data team, and they are running, trying to keep up with it, because somehow we set the fox to keep the geese, right? So the business is asking these questions, and they need results fast, because they are driven by all the changes that happen outside fast every day. And the data team tries to keep up, but of course, it's not easy. And so I think we have seen most of the findings. Most of it has been touched on already, but just to reiterate a few of them, we have seen already this phrase here: the business users cannot implement new requirements themselves. Yeah, because we put the IT in charge, and we put them in charge because the tooling and the landscape is complicated and it's complex and it's using a lot of tooling, and that is why it was one of the results is that the data landscape is the limiting factor to gain the insights actually. And on the other hand, we have the IT who is not reacting quickly enough to these requirements. Yep, because they can't, because it's too complex, right? And they try to keep up with all the new technologies, and at the same time, they don't have the pressure on like the business people do. And then I really like that the study said the business users are patient, but we at Time Extender really think they shouldn't be patient. They should have never been patient, and they shouldn't be patient, especially today. And I mean, the complexity is exactly in these kinds of pictures, and that is what you have built. That has been built from the data teams, from mostly from IT, but that is why IT is the owner of all of this data landscape, because it's a whole mess of pipelines and complexity of tools and structures and all the things in place that are not only hard to build, but even more so hard to maintain. And business people, like they you cannot put them in charge of managing something like this, right? It is just not feasible for them. And so, but the study said we want the business experts to take responsibility, because only then will we get the agility and the fast responses that we really need, to get the value from the data that we want in the time that we need it. And so we already also touched on this one, but we want the subject matter experts to be in charge. And now we have this disparity also that we've already seen between management and the people doing the work, and we are seeing that harmonization of the sources is difficult, but we see also a lack of competencies on the business side, and a lack of urgency basically on the IT side.
I'm not sure if you're all having the same issues that I am, but it seems we lost Frank. Okay. Okay, then there's a question that was posted in the Q&A area that goes to the address of Denodo. Robin, are you there? Could you take a question?
I feel for Frank. This happened to me a while back, and it's just awful. So yeah, I saw the question. So how is organization handled in the logical data warehouse without any additional storage? It's a multi-layered question, so there's lots of ways we can answer it. But I think I'll keep it quite simple. Historization, as we know, is all about master data management and keeping track of what's going on with your data. One thing Denodo is it's not an MDM product. We do work with many MDM products. We have partnerships and tools out there that we're certified with and work with. But the whole concept of historization, if you want to take it to the nth degree, I would suggest you'd have a master data management vendor who you work with in that instance. And then there is some space taken. But by putting the logical data fabric in place, or logical data warehouse, or the logical approach, you absolutely minimize the amount of replication or additional storage you would need.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. I think master data and reference data and the historization of it is one aspect of historization, but transactional data frequently isn't held with lots of history in the operational systems either. And I think that many people understand as the data warehouse being the place to actually do that. And so I kind of understood the question also in the direction of, so if we don't historize in the operational system and we don't have a data warehouse, where should we, store our history? But I think it's obviously, as you gave the example of reference and master data, if I don't have a history, then I don't have it. And if I want to build it, then I need storage, right?
Absolutely. And there's no way to, I hope it didn't come across, and particularly when you talk about data virtualization, Jacqueline, I think we have a common understanding. Data virtualization helps you bring together these multiple data stores that you have. So whether they be a data warehouse or a data lake, any organization, and we see this, will have multiple locations of storage. And actually, one of the things that you should think about with your logical approach to data integration is where best. So which technique and place is best to store that particular type of data? So to your point, Jacqueline, structured data, brilliant. I would always say put that in a data warehouse. If you've got a load of streaming unstructured data, that's probably better in a data lake. And the historization there, the history will be stored accordingly. And then the data virtualization layer provides that access across the multiple stores you have.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, I think, Frank seems not to be back yet. So what I would suggest is I'd like to post another question both to you, Robin, and also to John. So maybe we could invite John back on, and we could maybe chat a little bit about data fabric. Hi, John.
Hey.
So,
hi, John.
So one thing I would like to share is because one of the attendees posted in the chat, data fabric and data mesh are very relevant to them. And thanks again to Robin for describing. I basically understand the approach that John gave us of their solution to also be a part of a data fabric approach. And Frank, welcome back. I'll just take a look at I'd like to post this question, and then we can look if we'll get back to your presentation after we've handled the question. Is that okay for you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, perfect. So I wanted to chat a little bit about data fabric. And so one thing in the study we asked about data mesh and we asked about data fabric, but apparently in the marketplace, these names and concepts aren't that well known. And it seemed that data mesh was more well known, still not well known, but more known than data fabric, which I was kind of surprised about. So that just to share with others. But we see a lot of buzz about both terms. And now specifically around data fabric. So it's an architecture principle that says we virtualize if we can. But it says a lot of other things as well. We want to automate things to make it simpler. We want to enable business users, etc. So what is your vision on data fabric and on the journey to data fabric, picking up John's wording of the journey? What do you think? What is your vision, and what are the important steps for someone wanting to go a data fabric approach? What are the success factors, kind of? Your thoughts, John?
I think it really comes down to making a lot more of these decisions at the higher level, right? So a lot of times, at least, in my experience working with these types of solutions, you often have one particular line of business or you have one application that sort of needs to put together these different requirements. But really to build this type of environment, as you say, right, it's an architecture change. It's something that needs to take place from kind of the highest levels of the organization. So I think having, buy-in from executive stakeholders, we saw in the study, sometimes that's a little bit more clear cut than others, but I think
for a few
you'll start
seconds.
to see this evolve and become more commonplace, especially as you have more of those C-suite executives kind of coming on board with this modernization. So I think the study tells us we still have a little bit of ways to go in terms of the messaging and making progress there. And I think that's really going to be what pushes us to the next phase of things, in my opinion.
Thank you. Frank, your take?
Sorry, I was bound up here with setting up my setup again. I'm sorry.
Then we'll pass it on to Robin, and then we'll give you back the stage. Robin, are you with us? Your take on data fabric and the vision and how to approach limitations, possibilities?
Yeah, and I think hopefully you can hear me. I think we're having a few network bandwidth issues today. So my take on data fabric is it's an architecture, and it's an architecture that enables sharing, and it's very well designed to help us create, if you want to call them data meshes, a data mesh, and that's the way that the business user can end up having the best experience in terms of managing their data. So for me, making sure everything is in a monolithic environment. So accept the reality of life, and that's that you have a data warehouse, you have a data lake, you have flat file stores, and you're not going to change that. So using the technologies around to create that architecture for me is the right approach, and that creates your data fabric. And then how you use your data fabric, is up to the organization. But data mesh certainly is an approach that we see being very successful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to hand back to you, Frank, and maybe you might want to say one or two things about data fabric before you restart, or just jump back into your presentation. All is fine. Go ahead. The stage is yours.
Right. Thank you, Jacqueline. Basically, I completely agree with Robin. So the data landscape is already complex, and it will not become simpler. Rather, you will have to deal with the complexity, and we are seeing a lot of customers thinking in tier 1, tier 2, or even tier 1 to tier 2, tier 3 scenarios, with more curated data, and then self-service and best of breed scenarios in the middle. And so this will be the reality, and the only thing that is constant will be the change around these kinds of landscapes, and you will have to deal with it and basically make the best of it, and also just realize that it will be diverse and distributed basically throughout your organization. But still, one part of this distributed architecture and data landscape, we think, will be the data warehouse, because it is just a requirement to curate the data at some point to make it accessible for the kind of tier 1 requirements, but also for more tier 2 and more ad hoc stuff and all of that. So it will still play a central role while being surrounded by other elements of your overall landscape. So I'm not exactly 100% sure where I was cut off before. So let me just quickly reiterate this slide before I then would like to jump into a quick demo, actually, because we think the speed you can really gain by taking this different approach will give you so much speed that we can actually demonstrate it even in this kind of webinar today. So I was talking about enabling the business user to collaborate and to contribute even to the way the data landscape is designed. And that is exactly what Time Extender is. We call it a data estate builder because it will help you build build out the whole landscape from connecting to your data sources, which can be, of course, relational databases, your ERP system, and all of that stuff. But also, we all know it will be flat files, it will be Excel files, it will be today data lakes, of course, it will be OData feeds, REST APIs, web services, web applications, and all of that stuff. So you need to connect to the data sources. But once you are connected, you always want to do the same things. You want to get the data out. You want to do basically incremental loading. You want to take care of schema drift. You want to build up your own history because the source may not have a history. And you also don't want to put too much analytical pressure on the source systems. So you want to do basically the same things to all various kinds of sources that you have in your organization. And we do just that in a drag and drop way to get the data out of the data sources, onboard them to a data lake. From here, you can model them into a data warehouse, make them nice and concise to shape them so that you can really do your analysis on it, apply your data quality rules, apply your business rules on top of it, and really harmonize across the data sources as well to bring them together. Also, you can take it to the next step and build data marts or data products, which can be a subset of the data warehouse, enriched with additional business logic in there. And all of this can be done from a business user perspective because it's low code, it's very agile, it's very fast, it's very simple, very visual, and but it is still, the end result is still something that IT can understand and they can support, and this will be like bringing them together because it gives them the lineage, it gives them one interface to do all of that in a very good way that bridges the gap between the two. So I would like to actually do a quick demo with you. And in this case, let's just have a imaginary use case. We have acquired a new company, and they have their own ERP system, and we have already this financial dashboard in place. And now we want to connect to the new ERP system. We want to onboard to our data lake. We want to integrate into our data warehouse, and we want to have a new measure in our dashboard here in Power BI in this case. And it can be really fast. So I really want to do this in just a couple of minutes to show you how fast things like this can be. And in order to do that, I just jump over to time extender, and you can see I have already some data sources here set up. In our example, it is built now, the current warehouse on AW 2019. And so the first step is we just onboard a new data source. And the IT guys have already taken care for me for the data connectivity. They have used one of the 250 data connectors to really connect to the data source. So me as a business person, I just click and add a new data source. Let's call it AW 2022. Here I can see the data sources that they have already prepared for me. In this case, I will use this one, but you can see it can be REST APIs, it can be SAP data, it can be flat files, it can be a lot of stuff. But I will just connect to this one. Then I can get to a table selection, only import a subset, or I can just go with all of them. And then I will actually move the data, because the beauty of our approach is that we do all of the stuff in metadata first and only move the data when it's really time to do it. And that will give you a lot of speed. And it will also give you flexibility, because your logic, your business logic, your overall data flow is not hard coded into one particular technology, but instead it is built into the metadata layer here, and you can just deploy it later on to different targets, basically. So now we have onboarded a new source already to the data lake, and I can also show you, like, we have our data lake here, and you have all the tables, and you have all the stuff with metadata happening, and etc. And this is very complex. There's a lot of best practices going into it, a lot of discussions of how it should be done in the best way. But we have it abstracted away from the user in a way that he can just rely on, that it is being done in the best way with a lot of best practices implemented, and he can just do it from a business perspective. So now the data source is already connected. It is already onboarded. So now let's just look for the product tables in the new data source. And everything is already in place. Over here, I have my data warehouse. I have a couple of tables here. So let's say I have the product model table, and it is now mapped to just one source system. And in this case, I will just add a new mapping to it with the smart synchronization that will just map new fields to the existing mapping, and one field has not been found in the new data source, so that one I can just correct. But you can see how fast it goes and how it just tries to automate as much as possible to really accelerate this process and to make it approachable for a business person. So also over here, let's add the 2 new fields that have not been found, and I can also only drop them where the data types are suitable for it. So, and that is already like consolidating 2 ERP systems into one data warehouse, and I think this is really a fast way of doing it. And you can not only do it in a manual way, but you can also do it in a rule-based approach. So here I have said map all the tables that have the name of sales order header into this particular table, and it will just search through the newly added metadata, and it will just add the tables to the mapping. And let's do the same here for the second fact table. I will also just refresh the mapping set with the rules, and that is it. I have now also here mapped 2 tables into the data warehouse. So now let's add a new measure as well to really see how it works. Let's say this is gross line total, and this will be something that's numeric. And as I said, think of it like WordPress. We don't take away the code, we don't take away the power of code, but we just automate the 80% that is repetitive and that is not necessary to do in a manual way all the time. So in this case, I want to multiply order quantity with the unit price, and you can see down here we are adding what we call the parameters, and that will really ensure that we know about the dependencies and the data lineage and where everything is used. So now it's already time to deploy and execute and think what we have done. Let me add a version control node here. Think about what we have done just now. We have onboarded a new data source. We have added it to the data lake with schema drift, with incremental extraction. We have added it to the data warehouse. We have consolidated it with the existing structure. We have added a new measure to the fact table, and we are executing right now, as you can see, in an optimized way to really make sure that we meet all the dependencies between the tables, but also that we minimize and learn over time from how the executions go, how long they take, and that we can shorten the overall execution time. So now we have the new measure here in our data warehouse, and the next layer is over here, our semantic model, basically our cube. And over here, we can also just include the measure in our model and do also the semantic modeling over here. Let's say this is a dollar amount without decimals, and I want to summarize it. And that is all I need to do. So me as a business person, I can very well go all the way through this process and understand very easily what I need to do and what needs to happen, while all the technicalities and all the complexity is basically orchestrated by the tool. But I can still communicate about this with IT and can explain what works or what doesn't. And IT can really focus, or the data engineers, they can really focus on the 20% that are making up the complexity. Because now we have in 10 minutes or 7 minutes or something like that, done all of this tedious work that would have taken days or weeks for them to implement. And not only that, but we have also updated the lineage in real time, right? So this is especially important for the maintenance of such projects. If you work on it continuously to keep the transparency in place. So, and then let me just sum that up from our point of view. We really think, and I think the study clearly shows, that delivering business value fast is so much more important than focusing overly on the individual underlying technologies. And basically what we are saying, give power to the business people, right? Take them onto the journey, make them part of the process, hand over the responsibility to them that they can bear, right? Like focus on the 80%. They can do all the transformations and they can understand and explain and implement even their business needs if the right tooling is in place for them to use. And that will also give data engineers the freedom to take care about the underlying infrastructure, to think about new technologies and how to incorporate all of that in their overall landscape. Yeah, I already said what did we achieve in just a few minutes. We onboarded the source, we consolidated it, we added it to the warehouse, added new calculations, we extended our data product, and all of that in just a few minutes. And we've also up-to-date lineage and documentation. So that is what we think the future should look like, and we have, of course, already a lot of customers doing it this way. And we think this is the speed that is needed for the companies, for the business people, but also for the data engineers to not be haunted by all of the requirements, by the backlog, and by all of these things, but instead coming again ahead of the curve and being a valuable contributor to the actual business value. But that is the kind of tooling that you need to regain that speed.
Thank you very much, Frank, and especially thank you for coming back and keeping a cool head. Great that you could pick up your presentation again. There was actually one question in the chat that was posted explicitly to you, and I think the question was about what you said when you were giving your feedback to the data fabric issue. So you were speaking about different tiers, tier 1, 2, and 3. Do you recall exactly what you were actually thinking of, and could you tell Matthias what you actually meant?
Yeah, so for example, I mean, you know, there is a very good reason why we have all come this long way of building the data warehouse. And of course there's technological reasons, but the one big reason is, of course, this the single point of truth, right? And that is also why we think that IT and the data teams, why they are so protective, because they have spent a lot of effort in building this one point of truth data warehouse. So a lot of effort has gone into it, and so they try to protect it to not how can I say yeah, to not let bad data in or something like that. But the reality of the business is they need new data in the analysis fast, right? So, and that is how the self-service stuff came up. And people started building all of their shadow IT first in Excel, and today they do it in other tooling that we have, and so on. But I think there is a convergence between the two, because IT and data, they are realizing, the data teams, they are realizing, well, it's all fine and good if we have the central data warehouse and it's super cool and super curated and super precise and everything, but nobody's using it because it's just not covering the stuff that we need. And on the other hand, you have this crazy amount of the self-built stuff in Excel and Power BI and all of that stuff, but that is not sustainable, because then you have 10 definitions of sales amount and, you know, these kinds of discussions. Because everybody has done their own. So what we are really seeing is companies are trying in our customer base. They are trying to, a lot of them are building out the tier 1, right? So still the curated warehouse. This is the slow moving, but very trustful and trustworthy central point to get your data. But also they are looking for ways to incorporate like fast lanes around it, but in a not so freestyle way that it's just a free floating Excel file. But how can we incorporate fast lanes around the data warehouse to have people bring new data to the central location and to incorporate it into their analysis in a very fast and agile way. And then when we see that the analysis is giving value to the business, then we can with this fast line in place already onboard stuff faster to the actual warehouse, right? So the warehouse will stay relevant, but it needs to open up to onboard new data faster and other data sources faster. And so this is like this tier 1, tier 2 model, or whatever you want to call it, like a fast lane, to open up for combined analysis, but also to open up for things that make sense to really onboard to the central points of data.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome very, very briefly John and Robin back on stage so that I can say thank you to everyone. If there are questions left to the audience, if you still have questions left, please post them and we'll get back to you. Or of course, you can also contact the speakers directly because the contact info should actually be in the handouts. I would like to say a very, very warm thank you to Robin, to John, and to Frank for being here today and for sharing your insights and for sharing your vision, your product vision with the audience. Thank you very much. And I hope the session was useful for everyone there and hope to see everyone back again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.